Hello friends, this is Jar with more Library of Ruina. Today I'll be showcasing all the builds all my friends from different servers are using, and my thinking process behind those builds. I'm not a man of many words, so let's get straight to the point. Let's start with Floor of History, where Suma and Kether from the Weeb server are located. Malkuth's floor contains abnormalities themed around abandonment, with mechanics based on revenge and things that activate upon taking hits, like ashes, spores, loyalty, and a barrier of thorns, as well as other general purpose buffs like happy memories and gluttony, allowing for simple yet effective strategies. Malkuth herself is using Xiao's key page, Lowell's wife and leader of Leo's Section 1. This key page comes with high stats, free fervor as a Leo member, and 2 unique passives. Force of a Wildfire, which upon staggering an enemy with burn spreads half his burn to all enemies, and 9 Children of the Dragon, which is more complicated. Basically, on emotion level 2 she manifests an incomplete EGO, which boosts all her offensive dice by 1 and makes her immune to fire damage, and on emotion level 4 the EGO will be complete, giving her access to Xiao's unique mass attacks, Pulao and Yaji to weaken enemies and strengthen herself respectively, and Tao Ti, which does this. Maybe it's pronounced Dao-Di, I don't know. As for attributed passives, Hugging Fire sitting on Brushwood, or just Brushwood, to make her burn also deals stagger damage, Respiration for light recovery, Battle Ready because starting with all your high cost pages sucks, Stigma Workshop Weaponry for extra burn, and Lone Fixer because there's more space for it and I'm certainly not using it for the She passive, so at this point, why not? Looking at her combat pages, you can already see a running trend. A lot of the combat bookshelves will be set up as singleton, meaning there are no duplicates among your combat pages, which enables things like Will of the Prescript and Multislash for very high consistency. She also has Frontal Assault and Forward March for light recovery, Flow of the Sword, Fiery Dragon Slash, and Chi Wen to burn people, and her exclusives Xuan Ni for even more burn, and Raging Storm Love for deck thinning and still more burn. Suma, you are rocking the key page of She Association Manager Eugen, and of course I am running a Rapid Gaseous Cologne build like the meta said. As if I was a meta slave, you're running Divinatory Impact like a real man. Or woman. As you can see, Rapid Gaseous has 4 dice that roll minimum 4, while Divinatory Impact has 5 rolls that roll minimum 6. 5 is bigger than 4, 6 is also bigger than 4, and therefore my brain is bigger than yours. 3 copies of Forward March to take care of light recovery in a pinch, 2 Sturdy Defense for page draw and early clashing, and 1 Weeb Slash because if you use Eugen, you gotta run the Weeb Slash. The big disadvantage is that this build needs happy memories to function properly, even more so than any other build, which is why it cannot function outside of Malkuth's floor. If I do not get happy memories, that's basically a restart. Eugen's entire gimmick is that she has a large amount of base HP but starts with only 25% of it, which is 67 at base, and she has one of her speed dice permanently sealed to activate other abilities such as recovering 2 light for free if she's using a page whose base cost is 4 or higher. This has the side effect that all HP giving battle symbols will be much worse on her, and combined with her only having 67 base HP means you are the squishiest character in the whole library to start with. To counteract this, I attributed Cecil's passives to give you Firm as a Great Mountain, causing you to gain 20 HP for free every time your emotion level goes up. And since you have such a large empty open-ended HP pool, and I am not using anything that makes use of Eugen's low HP status, this is the perfect place to put it on as it allows you to end up with an absurd amount of HP. Cecil is also a Leo member, meaning there's also Fervor, which is always great, and I also gave you Skim Prescript for the same reason I gave Battle Ready to Malkuth, and High Level Acrobatics, which buffs every page that costs 3 or more at base to make Divinatory Impact even more punchy. Kether, you are using Kalo's key page, the boss of the Thumb. You wanted guns, so I'm giving you all the guns, because as a Thumb member, Kalo gets access to a set of the most powerful ranged attacks in the game. Only problem is the Thumb is based on the Italian Mafia rather than anything American. The Thumb's main gimmick is that they use bayonet attacks to gain ammo, then discard said ammo to gain bonuses on their ranged attacks. Every couple attacks you get a random ammo, and when using reload or bayonet combat you also get ammo. When the ammo is shot by itself or discarded via thumb ranged attacks, which I guess also means it's shot, it buffs all your ranged attacks this turn to either clash easier, debuff enemies, or set people on fire, on top of whatever buff the attacks itself gains from discarding it. The odd one out is Summary Judgment, which does not gain any ammo bonuses because it's a melee attack, but this also means it can potentially refund its own ammo cost. I also gave you Class and Respect and Multi-Slash for more consistency, seeing as using one of every thumb page already sets up Singleton nicely, and Switcheroo, which when discarded lets you draw a page for free. As the thumb boss, you also gain the passives Threefold Tenacity, which buffs your attacks more frequently as the fight goes on, and Boss's Orders, which gives protection to your friends for free just by existing. I also gave you Acrobatic and Empowered First Shot to let you deal even more damage with your guns, as well as Best Choice and Bottom Deal because of all the stuff you'll be discarding, allowing you to heal and draw more pages. I would also give you Stacking the Deck, but this is somewhere else where we'll get to it later, and I can only get one copy of it, so that kind of sucks. The NPCs are running a Singleton Udyat defense build with Liquefied Flesh and Your Shield, as well as Electric Shock to inflict paralysis occasionally, and a Singleton May build with Concentration and Solidarity for buffs, as well as Electric Shock to inflict paralysis occasionally. The NPCs on all floors are mostly just gonna be strong generic builds with some throwaway passives which are just there because why not, so I won't take much time explaining them. We'll get back to the specifics of May and the Udyat later. For now, it's time to move on to Floor of Technology. The Floor of Technology is home to Archon and Paradox Lacuna from the Greenie server. Yesod's floor is the most straightforward one of them all. The abnormalities on the floor are themed around indiscriminate and unconscious killing, and this is reflected in the buffs on this floor, focusing on outspeeding your opponents with all-round helper buffs like repetitive pattern recognition, and then overpowering them with buffed attacks, as well as emphasis on blunt damage via Forsaken Murderous buffs. This floor is also host to an immensely powerful build which I won't be using because, among other things, I don't like optimizing the fun out of fights. Yesod himself is using Yae's key page, which is the leader of the Leaflet Workshop, a set of guys focused on Smoke. Smoke is a debuff that increases damage received, boosts all dice by +1 at 9 smoke, stacks up to 10, and lowers by 1 each scene. All smoke-based key pages come with the passive Puffy Broom, which turns the damage received effect from smoke into damage dealt. Yae comes with buffs that increase his power and damage output even further if he has high smoke, Immediate Repairs, which recovers him from stagger for free once per fight, and Madness, which inflicts a random buff onto himself. Or sometimes just makes him squishy as all hell by turning the random buff into 5 fragile. Yae's key page only has space for 3 other passives, so I gave him Internal Combustion Engine from the Church of Gears to increase his smoke gain, and the 2 Best Smiling Faces passives to buff him further when high on smoke. In terms of combat pages, it's a Smoke Singleton build with Will of the Prescript, Smoking Pipe, Guidance of Gears, and Multi-Slash for consistency, Smoke Smash, Smoke Prick, Deep Drag, and Yae's exclusive Exhale Smoke for damage output and smoke infliction, and Loss of Senses for more page draw and occasional debuffing. Archon and Paradox Lacuna, you two are the blunt specialists of this floor. Your builds are very similar, both being Singleton and blunt focused, and are only really different in your offense as far as key pages go. Starting with Archon, you have Boris's key page. Boris is technically a thumb guy, but he doesn't get access to any of their guns. Instead, he brings Brass Knuckles to a gunfight. Boris is awesome. As Boris, you get Grit, which makes you take 1 less damage from all sources, including things like status effects. And I gave you lots of supportive passives to synergize with your supportive combat pages, more on that later. Mind Hauler to recover some stagger on each hit, Oink Oink and Improv Drumming to spread more debuffs, and Squeak Squeak, Puppet Skeleton, and Concussion because you're still using blunt attacks which are nicely buffed by those. You're usually the guy I put Metallic Ringing on because of all this. You have Puppet Blockade and Gigigig, it's a puppet noise, don't question it, for light recovery, Multi-Slash and Will of the Prescript for page draw, and more combat pages that inflict more debuffs like Faultless Strike and Forceful Gesture. Also Serpent Impact for general offense, Coordinated Assault to buff your friends, as well as Boris' special attack Discipline, because it power nulls itself in the page it clashes against, and all 3 instances of that last attack all proc Metallic Ringing, usually uncontested. Plus, you're Boris, you gotta run Discipline. Now, whereas Archon was more support-oriented, Paradox Lacuna, you on the other hand, are going full power stacking mode. Herald's key page attributed with Emma and Puppet passives. High-level acrobatics, Lion Fists, and Puppet Skeleton. These boost your blunt attacks by +2, +1 extra if it's a 3 or higher cost. Herald is also one of the Hana bosses, and as a Hana member he gains access to the 4 trigrams. 4 trigrams is a passive which gives you 4 special pseudo-EGO pages you can use to either increase power and damage output, increase defense and reduce damage taken, draw 1 page for free, or restore 1 light for free. He also gets all 4 Hana, which makes you more tanky, but it's a bit underwhelming for a Hana boss. He is still a Hana boss, however, which makes him very powerful by default. Your consistency tools are identical to Archon's arsenal, as well as Serpent Impact, but the rest of your offense is different. Strike Down, which is a strong and cheap hit, Repressed Flesh, which rolls minimum 7 on its blunt hits, Duel, which is great to punch through defenses and defend from counterattacks, and Trigram Formation, which gives buffs based on which trigram you've played this scene. It doesn't have any blunt dice, but it's already really strong on its own, and it's buffed by high-level acrobatics, which is nice. By the way, Hana has nothing to do with the Japanese word for flower, it's apparently Korean for one. The NPCs on this floor are actually slightly noteworthy. NPC Courtney is using a generic Leaflet Fixer smoke build with Church of Gears passive Stimulating Flumes for added defense and Puppet Skeleton for extra power on the blunt attacks. 2 Smoking Pipe, 1 Inhale Smoke, 1 Guidance of Gears, 2 Smoke Brick, 2 Deep Drag, and 1 Loss of Senses. You'll see variations of this build a lot on other floors, as having a designated smoker is very nice to have. If I say generic smoke support later down the line, this is pretty much the exact build I'm referring to. Maybe some slight variations, but mostly similar. Certainly the key and combat pages will be the same. NPC Nicole is running Martina's key page with Rhino passives and a singleton charge build. We'll get into what all of this means way later, but let's just say that Bulky, Impact, and Ripple are strong single attacks, and Martina's exclusive Uncanny Strike is great at tearing a fat chunk of stagger out of an enemy. But first, let's move up another floor. Floor of Literature is where Alice and Tarit of the Weeb server are located. This floor focuses on negative debuffs, bleed in particular, and slash attacks for some power stacking with abnormalities themed around, of all things, relationships. I don't get it either. Anyways, Hot is the one using the Purple Tear key page, and boy is this a handful to explain. The Purple Tear is a color fixer like the Red Mist was, and she fights by using different stances, which can be changed by spending 1 light, and each stance uses a different set of combat pages. There's Slash, Pierce, Blunt, and Guard, which all buff their respective attacks and apply a bonus effect. Slash increases damage dealt, Blunt increases stagger dealt, Pierce increases ailments applied, and Guard makes her immune to all negative status effects. She also has a passive that allows her to re-roll minimum rolls once per dice, which has some neat synergy with the Funny Prank abnormality page, but this rarely comes up because Funny Prank rarely shows up. Plus a unique mass attack, which is neat. Now onto attributed passives. First of all, I've given her Fervor and Skim Prescript. Fervor is a no-brainer, and Skim Prescript lets her start with a bigger hand. And now for the spicy tech passives, Singular Strike and High-Level Acrobatics. Singular Strike makes all pages with just 1 offensive dice power up that 1 dice by 2, and it allows it to earn double emotion points in a clash. High-Level Acrobatics I already went over. To explain why those 2 passives, let's check out the combat pages. For the Slash stance, I'm running 2 Class and Respect, 1 Serpent Sword Technique, 2 Snake Slit, more on that later, 1 Will of the City, 1 Critical Moment, 1 Violet Blade, and the Mass Attack. Pierce has a singleton build with Shoving Stab, Gale Kick, Venomous Fangs, Laceration, Celestial Spear, and the Mass Attack. Blunt is equipped with 2 Puppet Blockade, 2 High Kick, 2 Serpent Impact, 1 Repressed Flesh, 1 Duel, and the Mass Attack. And Guard is also running singleton with defensive options such as Sturdy Defense, Serpentine Barrier, as well as Overcharge and Ready Up Tech in, because Guard stance nullifies the immobilization from Overcharge and Ready Up to protect the team, and so the charge she gathers can actually be put to use. The total amount of pages buffed by those 2 passives mentioned earlier is in total very high. Some of them are even buffed by both, like Celestial Spear and especially Violet Blade, which doubles all power bonuses on itself. But even outside of that, Singular Strike also buffs Shoving Stab and Gale Kick. Yes, Singular Strike ignores counter dice on a page unless it's the only one on it, as well as Class and Respect and High Kick, which are just there for resource generation. And High Level Acrobatics buffs all the high cost pages, including the Mass Attack and Overcharge. And remember, this is all on top of the buffs given by the stands in play. It's a strong build for power stacking. Now on to Alice. You are the floor's resident /bleed specialist using the key page of Don Juan, the Grade 1 Fixer. This one comes with built-in fervor despite not being a Leo guy, toughness to tank things better, carver of scars to make people bleed, and the rupture wound to increase damage against bleeding enemies. I've also given you Kurokomo passives like Sayo's Dark Cloud Blade for increased slash power and Razor Strike and Digging Shank for even more bleed, as well as Health Hauler for some HP recovery because your HP is a bit on the low end. You are rocking 1 Class and Respect, 1 Serpent Sword Technique, 3 copies of Snake Slit, 2 Will of the City for more consistency, and Critical Moment for a nice strong attack that also has the neat side effect of drawing a page. Snake Slit deserves special mention here. Sharpened Blade is back on the menu, boys. We've already seen it on HOD, now it's time to explain. Snake Slit increases the power of your slash attacks by 2 for this scene, which includes its own dice and its stacks. Using 2 Snake Slits plus Sayo's +1 slash passive boosts the 2/4 attacks of it up to a 7/9. Add the bonus from Axe on top of that and you're going to deal a lot of damage like this and inflict lots of bleed because every page you have except Serpent Sword Technique and Will of the City inflicts bleed by default, boosted even further by your passives. When you're done with someone, they either won't survive it or wish they hadn't because they're now dying of blood loss. I also think it's funny that you still have the punchy Yun appearance but still inflict slash and bleed. Maybe you're karate chopping them like Yasha from Asura's Wrath. Whereas Alice is killing enemies via Death of 1,000 Cuts style aggression, Tarit on the other hand, you focus on striking them down with 1 powerful swing because you have bamboo-hatted Kim's key page. This one comes with lots of passives to ruin everybody's day. Singular Strike, which I already went over, Swordplay of the Homeland, which is just Dark Cloud Blade but even stronger, and Unrelenting to make you harder to kill by allowing you to survive a whole round of would-be fatal hits. Also some throwaway bleed passives. On top of that, I also gave you Sayo's passives Dark Cloud Blade for even chop your swords, which also conveniently comes with Battle Ready, which your particular build needs, more on that later. One downside of the Kim key page is that it can only hold 3 other passives, and because Kim has very low HP, I did the same thing I did with Suma's Yujin build that gave you Firm as a Great Mountain. It won't be as effective as on Suma's key page, but it's sure as hell better than giving Health Hauler to a Singular Strike build or Corpse Cleanup, which is most of the time outclassed by Health Hauler to start with. Speaking of Singular Strike build, 3 copies of Class and Respect for Light Recovery, 2 copies of Clone, 1 of Kim's exclusive page Yield My Flesh, and 3 copies of Burning Flash. Here's how it works. Burning Flash discards another copy of itself on use to boost itself by giving itself the other die from the discarded Burning Flash. Yes, both of those are affected by Singular Strike. This is where Clone comes in. It copies the highest cost page in your hand and permanently adds another copy of it to your deck, allowing you to have 5 copies of Burning Flash ready to go. I just gotta make sure to do this while you don't have Yield My Flesh in hand because I don't want to copy that one, but I can just let you use that first. Burning Flash also draws 1 in exchange for the discard, allowing for a free refill. Class and Respect is also affected by all of Kim's buffs. How'd you like a light recovery page that rolls a minimum of 9 by default? Oh, and Yield My Flesh is a single powerful attack that when it loses a clash somehow, it will add an immensely powerful counterattack called Claim Their Bones to your hand, which is borderline impossible to win a clash against. Unless the enemy uses their most powerful attack and the dice rolls aren't in your favor. The NPCs are using a defense-oriented Chun build for tanking purposes with Mind Hauler, Liquefied Flesh and Your Shield, and a balanced Singleton Udyat build with some throwaway passives and ready up and coordinated assault to further help protect the team because you two lack defensive options. And that'll be it for Flow of Literature. Next is everyone's favorite drinking buddy. Floor of Arts is home to friends from the Nightling server, and it works a bit differently from the previous floors. Netzach doesn't win by stacking large amounts of power onto your guys and then steamrolling them with huge dice. Floor of Arts wins by how fights in this game are won in general, by dying a little bit more slowly than your opponent. Netzach's abnormalities are themed around obsession and happiness, and provide bonuses that make you win by attrition, like Laughing Powder, Token of Friendship, and Flower Petals. And where Yesod and Hod focused on Blunt and Slash respectively, Netzach specializes in Pierce support in the form of Tentacles and Thorns, but mostly Tentacles. Netzach himself is the floor's designated Pierce specialist with a generic Night Owl key page, giving him a full buff to all Pierce dice but weakening all other offensive dice. There's also Mercy, but that's a win more effect if anything. In addition to this, I gave him Wedge Office passives for increased stabbing, Hauler passives for even more sustain, as well as Digging Shank for increased bleed because he's running a Pierce bleed build. The thing about Pierce buffs on Netzach's floor is that they don't buff their power but rather give them supportive bonuses. Tentacles in particular makes it so everything that's hit by a Pierce attack from Netzach loses 5% of their maximum stagger, stacking up to 50%. Again, this floor doesn't win by power stacking. It does however shine at neutering single targets, and due to a lack of power stacking options, having Stiletto and Wedge does help a lot. Now because Stiletto, the Night Owl passive, decreases the power of non-Pierce attacks, this means that Netzach has to be stuck running nothing but Pierce attacks. Thankfully, he has a strong selection to choose from. Frontal Assault and Wedging Thorn are already no-brainers from Star of the City level due to being Pierce, plus Extract Fuel, which completes the trio of light recovery and also conveniently heals him on hit. Shoving Stab and Celestial Spear for general offense, Snake Spray, Venomous Fangs and Laceration for bleed, and Will of the Prescript because it's singleton and is very conveniently just Pierce attacks. Shoving Stab even has the neat bonus of also inflicting bleed. The bleed it and the purple tier attacks all give is increased by Digging Shank, and that is potentially increased even further by Snake Spray. The lack of multi-slash is made up for by Extract Fuel and the fact that Shoving Stab and Celestial Spear each draw a page on use, so there's nothing to worry about consistency-wise in case Will of the Prescript somehow isn't enough already. Sobada, you have the key page of Lowell, Xiao's husband and commander of Leo Section 2. Unlike his wife, Lowell's key page is very straightforward. Your stats are decently high, and as a Leo member you get Fervor for free, and Lowell in particular also gets Fighter That Never Retreats, which says that in every scene where your emotion level goes up you gain an extra bit of power for that scene. I also gave you Skim Prescript so you can start with an extra page, Mind Hauler and Corpse Cleanup to recover your health and stagger, and Flaming Bat and Stigma Workshop Weaponry to set more people on fire even harder. Lowell is a Leo guy after all, and the Leo guys set people on fire. Giving Mind Hauler specifically to you also enables some nasty shenanigans for later down the line. 2 words: Spring's Genesis. Your attacks are also set up as singleton to enable Multi-Slash and Will of the Prescript, with Frontal Assault and Forward March as your light recovery alongside Multi-Slash. Flow of the Sword, Fiery Dragon Slash and Emotional Turbulence allow you to inflict lots of burn for lots of fire damage, BG to buff yourself further, and his exclusive mass attack Raging Storm Harm, which is Lowell's version of Xiao's Raging Storm Love. The difference is it needs a turn to wind up by using Forming Storm the turn before, and only hits once with a strong first die instead of Xiao's strong second, which is sometimes preferable to get rid of problematic starting dice. It's also comparatively cheap and can be made to hit like a truck when buffed with BG and your passives. Also, it looks really cool. Kazuya, you said you wanted a charge build, so I'm giving you the key page of Nemo, the cartoonishly corrupt charge-using CEO of Kane Office. He has a TV for a face and, like I said, specializes in charge. I should probably explain what this charge stuff actually is. Charge is electric energy manifested into a stacking buff that does nothing by itself, but is usually used to activate passives and spent on combat pages to activate additional effects. Remember Ready Up from earlier builds? It spends charge to boost the team's defense. You can store up to 10 of it, 20 with R-Corp passives. Speaking of passives, Nemo comes with all the Kane Office passives to give him various buffs upon spending or gaining charge, as well as Emergency Resuscitation Protocol, which upon death spends all your charge to heal you for the charge spent times 5, which is full HP with 20 charge. To top this off, I gave you some Reindeer passives to buff you even more with high charge, as well as Triple R Suit, the R-Corp passive I mentioned earlier that allows you to get up to 20 charge. Also Fervor, because Fervor is always a good choice. Your build has the usual singleton consistency, with one notable page being Graze the Grass, which both restores light and gives charge, and various other ways of gaining charge such as bulky impact and quick suppression, as well as ways to spend it. Ready Up I already went over. Ripple spends it on a big attack, and Nemo's exclusive TV Face Laser spends charge to destroy the next dice on a page to take care of potentially threatening attacks. The NPCs are using a singleton Mirror's Burn build with some throwaway passives and identify weak points splashed in, and a Boris tank support build with emergency rations and Rhino procedure for extra tankiness and wedge and dimensional sections for bonus damage. Now that we're done with the lower floors, onto the middle floors, starting with Tiphereth. Floor of Natural Science has a variety of people from different servers on it, as well as classic fan character Bong Bong. This floor is home to the magical girl abnormalities, themed around the vices of the city and its people, and their buffs aren't ones that will carry you on their own, but rather reward you for already playing the game well, and they don't provide any significant boosts for leveling the playing field. There are a couple strategies this floor offers. The first one is Nyx, which involves stacking Despair, Hate, Greed, Wrath, and Nyx onto the same person and mass debuff the enemies and also get rid of the negative effects of the first 4 of them. Another one is to just go for the clash winning bonuses, win all of the clashes, and then grab Acidic Sludge. What I'll be doing is the third option, namely doing the same as with the ladder, except I grab Void instead. I'll show you later, but first, builds. Tiphereth, the patron librarian, is using Olivier's key page, which is like Harold's key page that Paradox Lacuna is using, but better. Olivier also has all for Hana like Harold, as well as access to the trigrams like all Hana members, but also his own unique passive 12 Fixers, which boosts his minimum and eventually his maximum dice values, which doesn't count as power and is therefore immune to nullified power. Because his key page is already strong on its own, I didn't give it any strong extra passives like I did with Harold, and only put Fervor on it and some throwaway passives like Mindhauler and some others. As for attacks, I gave her a singleton build with Confrontation and Augur Cake to buff herself, as well as double-edged Recounter and Trigram Formation for offense. Not much else to say, it's really just big numbers. Although double-edged Recounter is slightly noteworthy in the sense that it buffs itself for each Clash 1 and is essentially a direct upgrade to Molinet, which I was using a lot in the mid-game. Yours truly is using Esther's key page, the first of the 3 index proxies. Unlike other earlier builds where singleton is just a way to enable consistency via multi-slash and Will of the Prescript, the index proxies are builds you want to play singleton because of their unique passive locked potential. After using 6 different pages in a fight, this passive boosts all dice values by a 1 and grants access to the proxies' special attacks, indicated by these blue glass shard thingies floating around the character. The index proxies also all have their own unique passives. Esther's allows me to draw an extra page after using 4 different ones. Also Fervor because it's Fervor, and some throwaway warp cleanup passives for occasional extra damage, as well as other cheap ones in the form of Electric Shock and Heavy-Hearted Forte. The attacks are, like I said, set up as singleton to enable both high consistency as well as locked potential. It consists of basic light recovery pages, multi-slash and Will of the Prescript for draw power, Be She for buffing, Binding Chains, Execute and Identify Weak Point for general offense, and Esther's special attack Castigation. This attack is the one that becomes available once Esther's Blade is unlocked. It is deceptively good at clashing despite its low roll, due to reducing the dice it's clashing against by 12, and it can deal a crap ton of damage because the damage it deals is multiplicative. Or a measly 7 if your roll sucks. Classic fan character Bong Bong is running the key build to make the Void strat work. A rather unassuming thumb build using Dennis's key page and discard passives in a similar fashion to what Gator is using, but with times like these added onto it. The combat pages are also straightforward. 2 Class and Respect, 2 Reload, 2 Bayonet Combat, 2 Shock Round, and 1 Focus Fire. Now what does all of this have to do with Void? Let me explain. What the abnormality page Void basically does is it adds a page to your hand that upon use permanently discards your entire hand and grants you 1 strength and endurance for everything discarded this way for the rest of the fight. This is where the thumb build comes in. If you discard a handful of ammo, which is permanently discarded anyways, your power can just skyrocket out of nowhere, especially when combined with the Nihil EGO on the same turn, which debuffs your opponents if your hand is empty. And this is further augmented by times like these, which gives you 1 extra strength if you ended the previous turn on an empty hand. Using Dennis's key page was also a deliberate choice, because Dennis's key page has the additional supplies passive, which occasionally recycles discarded ammo. The build can also hold its own in combat well before getting access to Void, as it is a thumb build and therefore has access to the thumb's powerful ranged attacks. Gosta from the Greenie server, you are running a generic Hana fixer key page, giving you access to the Hana trigrams just like Paradox Lacuna and Tiphereth do, and decent stats. I also gave you information assessment to potentially lower an opponent's defenses. Fun fact, information assessment can lower any resistance to normal, not just normal or endured resistances as it says. Sadly, this is the only Dante passive that has any use. Grasping vulnerabilities is useless if the target has no weaknesses, as pretty much all late game enemies do, and if you can consistently pull off seeing through weaknesses even against enemies with weaknesses, you're a better player than me. You also have Wedge because your offense leans towards Pierce, and some throwaway warp cleanup passives for extra damage. Your combat pages are also singleton with Somber Procuration, Binding Chains, Celestial Spear, Laceration, and Unyielding Strike for offense. Unlike with a Night Owl key page, I can put multi-slash on yours without worries, and if I get lucky and get access to Blade wetted with teardrops, you're the guy who gets it. Frontal Assault's second dice has a 50% chance of activating it, and the second dice of Wedging Thorn and Somber Procuration also have a 33% chance. Worshipping from the Weep server, you have May's key page, one of Lowell's subordinates. With May's key page, you get access to Vigilant in Peace, which recovers 25% stagger every time your emotion level rises, basically firm as a great mountain for stagger. She's also a Leo member, which means free fervor. Outside of that, I gave you Health Hauler and Liquefied Flesh as your HP is on the low end, as well as some throwaway passives focused on small bonuses on Clash wins, as it fits thematically with the buffs from this lore. Your offense consists of Flow of the Sword and Confrontation to set people on fire and help defend your team respectively, Steel Knuckles, which happens to include a page draw, Emotional Turbulence, which is just really strong to start with, Sturdy Defense for extra bulk, and May's, and also Cecil's exclusive attack, Tir Shankao, a combo attack with a powerful second hit and a counter die. And yes, I'm probably mispronouncing a lot of the Asian names in this, but I don't care and I'm not re-recording everything. Anyways, on to Gebura's floor. Floor of Language is home to more friends from the Weeb server, Nico and Depresso specifically, and it focuses on boosting a single individual librarian into an unstoppable machine of death. The abnormalities here are themed around violence and slaughter, and their buffs synergize like mad when stacked onto a single guy and also give bonuses when taking hits or being low on health, encouraging you to keep fighting. Mountain of Corpses in particular is this whole concept taken to its logical extreme, as this abnormality page kills everyone on your team except the selected librarian in exchange for allowing the entire floor to megazord together into a single entity controlled by said librarian. The result?
Goodbye.
Yeah, they're not pretty. Gebura herself is using Nikolai's key page, the commander of R-Corp's 4th pack. What happened to the first 3 packs though? Anyway, as an R-Corp member she gains access to triple R-Suit, allowing her to hold twice the charge, and if she has at least 11 charge, all allies gain 1 strength and endurance for free because of Nikolai's unique passive, the Commander. She also has another unique passive that allows her to mark an enemy, causing them to take 50% increased damage from all attacks. Combined with Smoke, you can up to double your damage output like this. I also gave her some Reindeer passives for extra charge boosts, as well as Gaze Office and Brotherhood of Iron passives to stack more strength and inflict paralysis, because paralysis is still great to have. As for her combat pages, Charge Singleton with Nikolai's exclusive pages Battle Command for extra buffs, and Disposal, a big single target damage nuke that is able to be recycled at a lower cost if it kills the target. It belongs in any and all Nikolai builds, full stop. This build doesn't have any ways of spending the charge, but I don't plan on spending any of the charge. It's simply there so she can sit on it for the free boost it provides and to enable the use of Disposal. Now you may be asking, what about Red Mist? Well, Nico here has the key page of Mio, the captain of the rabbit team of ArcCorp. Let me explain. Mio gets the 20 charge passive as an ArcCorp member, and as the rabbit captain she gets all the rabbit bonuses, which include haste upon reaching certain charge and damage thresholds, as well as the ability to indefinitely use all non-exclusive ranged attacks thanks to sufficient ammo. Her unique passive, Mio's Prowess, this is where things get interesting. If she attacks a target with lower speed, all her dice gain power equal to half the speed advantage rounded down up to 5. And since Nico wanted to be the strongest, I attributed the Red Mist's key page to it, which has a passive on it called... well, what do you know? This passive takes the lowest of her speed dice and gives them infinite speed, meaning at least one of her attacks will always roll with a +5 to everything. Red Mist also comes with Retaliate, which is just a free counter dice, and I also attributed Lone Fixer to you, in case I choose to give Mountain of Corpses to you again, because Lone Fixer gives you some strength for free if you are alone. Your combat pages include Graze the Grass, Forward March, and Multi-Slash for Light Recover, as well as Will of the Prescript for draw power, standard Singleton stuff. You've seen it all before. Concentrated Fire is one of the best non-exclusive ranged attacks in the game. Quick Suppression and Concentration serve as your main charge source, and Fervid Emotions because it's just a very powerful attack and it has a counter dice to synergize with Roll of the Wolf. This is all rounded up with Mio's unique page, Savage Mode. This makes you throw your gun away and turns all your ranged attacks, i.e. Concentrated Fire, into melee ones, which is sometimes nice and sometimes a disadvantage. But this is not why we're using it. It also boosts all your dice by another 1 power for the rest of the fight, and gives you access to Mio's unique mass attack, Feral Knives, a mass individual attack that deals bonus damage to the manually selected target. Its numbers aren't much, but with all those bonuses you're getting, it's gonna hurt regardless. Needless to say, the abnormality pages on this floor will all go onto Nico. That being said, if I encounter another fight later on that requires the Red Mist to be pulled out of retirement, you and Gebura will probably switch key pages. She will get Red Mist with Mio attributed, and you will get Nikolai's. One important question remains though, if I attribute the Red Mist's key page to Mio, or vice versa, does that count as Yuri? I mean, it's basically the same as holding hands. Or is it more like piggybacking? And because Nico's character is a girl, does that make this a lesbian love triangle? That would make sense after all, but it isn't quite the same because Gebura still exists as her own person, and it's really weird to think about it, but it just makes so much sense in my head, and because Lone Fixer comes from Ruina's key page, she is also involved in there, but she doesn't quite share the same connection. Depresso, you are equipped with the unstable page of the Crying Children, which basically emulates Philip's EGO. Your build is made to set everything on fire. If you hit something, it gets burned via Flaring Brand, and if you get hit by something, they get burned via Plume d'Escucheon. Plus, all your combat pages gain power if the target is already burning through Volatile Passion. Many of your combat pages already inflict burn by themselves, and I also gave you the Leo passives Fervor because of course, Furious Fire Rending the Skies, and Hugging Fire Sitting on Brushwood. Rending Skies allows you to occasionally inflict twice as much burn, and Brushwood makes all the burn applied by you also deal stagger damage. And to top it all off, the Dawn Office's Stigma Workshop Weaponry passive for even more burn. Many of your combat pages, as I've alluded to, inflict burn. Outside of the Singleton, Recovery and Draw Power pages, everything has an inflict burn effect on it in some way. Fiery Dragon Slash and Emotional Turbulence are very strong by themselves already. Flow of the Sword gets reduced cost at emotion level 3, making it one of the strongest 1-cost attacks in the game, and Sunset Blade, while absolutely horrible at clashing, is one of the best pages for inflicting burn in one-sided attacks. Lastly, there's Blazing Strike, Philip's unique attack. Blazing Strike is not an attack you use because it's meta or effective or something like that. Blazing Strike is an attack you use because it's awesome. The NPCs of Language Floor are equipped with a generic leaflet smoke build for damage support, hello Nikolai Mark, as well as a Hana Fixer running a Singleton build with some of Purple Tears attacks and Emotional Turbulence for offense. That about covers all of Language Floor. On the next floor, we have our coffee-drinking friend waiting for us. Floor of Social Science is home to more people from the Greenie server, Faye and Gomi. As for how this floor plays, take what I said about language floor and forget it for a second, because instead of buffing a single ally to the point of sometimes killing allies for an even greater boost, this floor focuses on keeping as many people as possible alive, gaining benefits from that, and also some mechanics related to light recovery and cost reduction, like Cartier, Emerald, and Warm Heart. The abnormalities here are the Wizard of Oz ones, apparently representing the hopes and dreams of the people living in the city which got crushed by their harsh reality, and the city being, well, the city. Coffeeman Chesed has Irina's key page, the CEO, I think, of Mirai Insurance, running a discard build. Having this key page grants him surprisingly good defenses as well as access to insurance benefits to restore his light upon getting one-sided attacked, policy form which removes all stacks of a random debuff from him every turn, and life insurance which gives him access to a free mass individual attack when low on health. It's not exactly a good one though. Because Mirai Insurance is all about discard, I gave him every single available discard related passive like Best Choice, Bottom Deal, Hanafuda's exclusive Stacking the Deck, as well as Olga's Margin. The deck itself consists of 2 switcheroos and 2 insurance coverages which let him draw and restore light respectively upon getting it discarded, Irina's exclusive multi-party compensation which recovers light for the whole team if it gets discarded, 1 brace up to discard a random page to draw 2 new ones, 2 final stroke which discards his entire hand to boost damage output, and 1 impugnatio ultima which also discards his entire hand to boost all of its dice rolls into one of the strongest single target attacks in the entire game. The reason this is on this floor specifically is solely because of multi-party compensation, because Chesed's floor loves recovering light and having team support. Faye, you are the one using the key page of Index Messenger Jan. This is another long one, so strap in. It's a very powerful page with a variety of unique properties. First is the passive name in Korean letters that is also the name of the key page itself. Fun fact, this is not an actual Korean word, but a load of gibberish made by typing the Korean translation for distorted yan into a Korean keyboard made to output Western letters, resulting in a mess of gibberish that looks like this. This was done in reverse for the English localization, by typing distorted yan into a Korean keyboard. Maybe if I input the German phrase into a Japanese keyboard, I could get the name for the German localization. Wait, where was I? Oh, right. Sadly, this is the only interesting thing to note about this passive really, because it only boosts your power the more negative emotion buffs you have, but this will rarely ever come up because it will almost always give Cartier to you because there is a much more effective strategy than that. More on that later. You also get access to another unique passive that is much more interesting, known as the Messenger, which is basically, what if the Hana trigrams could be used on my friends? Allowing an ally, but not yourself, to gain 1 strength or protection, draw 1 or restore 1 light completely for free. But just like the Hana trigrams, I tend to forget this occasionally, sadly. On top of that, I also attributed a May key page to it to give you Fervor and Vigilant in Peace, as well as some Warp Cleanup passives for occasional extra damage and Leeway's Concentration passive for free power at the start of a fight. Your offense consists of Singleton Recovery from Will of the Prescript and Multi-Slash, as well as Forward March and Frontal Assault for light recovery, Binding Chains and Confrontation for extra damage output, as well as all 3 of Jan's exclusive attacks. Baleful Brand, which inflicts erosion for bonus damage, Lock, which destroys the target's 3rd dice on Clash Win, and Jan's unique and very powerful mass attack, Distorted Blade. This is where Cartier comes in. Cartier is a buff that reduces the cost of the 2 most expensive pages in your hand by 1 if you deal more than a total of 15 damage per turn, which is very easy to do given it doesn't have to be in 1 hit, 1 attack page, or even on the same enemy. And if you manage to kill an enemy instead, the cost is instead reduced to 0. In fights against large groups of enemies, you can consistently throw out 0 cost mass attacks and spam them. It is actually possible to go even further beyond with Emerald and Clone, but just like with Red Mist, I won't use this strategy unless absolutely necessary. Gomi, you are rocking Maxim's key page, the captain of ArcCorp's Rhino team, which turns you into something that can only be described as literally Reinhardt from Overwatch. As an ArcCorp member, you gain triple Arsu to store up to 20 charge, as well as all of the Rhino passes, which increase your defenses as your HP gets lower and as you gain more charge. Upon reaching 20 charge, Maxim's unique passive Maximum Crash activates, which turns you into a full-on raid boss, increasing the damage you deal as well as reducing the damage you take even further. I also gave you Reindeer passives to also increase your power as your defense rises from the Rhino passives, as well as Fervor because of course, and Electric Shock from the Brotherhood of Iron for extra paralysis infliction. As a Rhino member, you get access to the Rhino's unique Rhino Ram attack, which also increases your defense for the turn and gives you lots of charge, all but guaranteeing most of your charge bonuses to activate next turn if played alongside other charge pages or if you had some charge beforehand. The rest is a standard charge build with singleton draw power from Will of the Prescript and multi-slash, and Graze the Grass and Forward March for light recovery. Bulky Impact and Quick Suppression are strong attacks that also generate charge, ready up to give your team some defense, as well as Maxim's unique mass attack, Ground Crash. Remember how I said it turns you into Overwatch Reinhardt? Comes complete with his ultimate. The NPCs of Social Science meanwhile are more geared towards single target damage. Johnson has Rose's key page with Kane Office and Reindeer passives running singleton with Overcharge and Warp Cleanup's unique Rip Space attack, and Everett has a generic Thumb build with Solidarity and Wedge instead of discard passives because the remaining discard passives are on other people. Now that we're done drinking coffee on the middle layer with Chesed, let's go visit Binah on the upper layer for some tea. Floor of Philosophy is home to Tokuri and Zominator from the Nightlink server. This floor houses the iconic Birds of the Black Forest, representing the city's oppressive government, the Head, and focus around redirecting aggression and messing with speed dice to funnel enemies into dangerous clashes with pages like Eternally Lit Lamp, Big Eyes, Punishing Beak, Tilted Scale, and Salvation. It also houses a few different strategies. First, the Apocalypse Bird strat, which similarly to Nyx involves dumping long arms, big eyes and small beak onto one guy and then using the beast to mass debuff the enemies. Alternatively, you can go for Guardians of the Forest, for which you need to do the opposite and give one page to each of your guys for a buff across the board for all of you. Regardless, the core strategy is further augmented by Binah's unique key page. Speaking of which, Binah is a unique case, as she cannot equip a different key page or different attacks and is stuck with her unique one, the page of the Incomplete Arbiter.
Oh, right. Spoilers, Binah is actually an Arbiter, in case you didn't know that yet.
Which, while very powerful, is more focused on locking enemies down and punishing them for aggression rather than direct offense. 3 degraded Fairy and 2 degraded Pillar inflict her unique debuff Fairy onto enemies on hit. What Fairy does is basically bleed on steroids. Every time the opponent rolls any offensive or defensive die, they take damage equal to the Fairy amount and then also at the end of the turn, and then it halves the stacks. This debuff alone makes Binah really strong, even when the floor barely has any upgrades and it only gets crazier from there. She also has 2 degraded Chain, which seals a speed die on hit, and 1 degraded Lock, which increases the light cost of their strongest attacks. There's also her unique mass attack, Degraded Shockwave, which is on the weak side but mainly serves to boost the defense of her friends and inflict feeble onto enemies and maybe get rid of some attacks in the process. While I cannot give her a different key page or different combat pages, what I can do is attribute new passives to her, so I gave her passives that mitigate her light recovery problems as much as possible. Respiration, which recovers extra light when it's at 0, Insurance Benefits, which recovers extra light when attacked one-sidedly, and Deep Breaths, which recovers extra light at random, as well as Fervor, which needs no explanation at this point. Tokuri, former captain of Extraction and designated boyfriend of Melting Love, you are using the key page of Rudolph, the captain of our corp's reindeer team. You wanted to bonk people with a stink, so I gave you the biggest stink in the game. Being Rudolph gives you the Arcor bonus of getting to store up to 20 charge, as well as the offensive bonuses from the reindeer passives, which increase your power and stagger damage output upon reaching certain health and charge thresholds. There's also Rudolph's unique passive, Survivor, which upon recovering from stagger permanently gives you 1 strength for the remainder of the fight, stacking up to 5. I usually try not activating this and treat it more as a neat bonus if you do get staggered. One thing the reindeers are really good at is putting out large amounts of stagger damage, but the pages that do this come at the price of dealing stagger damage to themselves immediately upon use. This also means that if you use them while low on stagger, you can accidentally stagger yourself and not use the attack. This is why I gave you Mind Hauler. With a lot of people, giving the Mind Hauler was more of an afterthought. You and Sobara are pretty much the only ones where giving you Mind Hauler was a conscious decision, specifically because of the stagger recall from Mind Whip and Energy Strike. Thanks to Mind Hauler, Energy Strike pays for its own stagger cost if both attacks connect, and Mind Whips is effectively halved, and all other connecting attacks also recover stagger. This way you can use Mind Whip and Energy Strike more frequently. Also, Rhino passives for added bulk to go with the Reindeer boosts and Electric Shock for occasional paralysis. As for your offense, you have the aforementioned Mind Whip and Energy Strike, Singleton Draw Power and Light Recovery as usual, Bulky Impact and Concentration to gain charge quickly, and of course Rudolph's exclusive mass attack, Mind Crush, which is great for mass staggering a group of enemies. Demonstrated best that one time you and Binah completely obliterated Justitia's bird mooks. Zominator, you are fitted with Bayard's key page, the boss of his namesake office. He has a passive called Offensive Position, which permanently gives you 1 strength and 3 fragile, as well as Psych Up and Ready Position, which give you strong buffs after being immobilized for a turn or just not using any pages. This is all because of Bayard's special attacks, Ready Position and Pinpoint Breakthrough. Here's how it works. Ready Position is an on-play page that immobilizes you for a turn in exchange for giving you access to Pinpoint Breakthrough next turn, which is a powerful 2-hit attack that spends your entire stagger bar in exchange for obliterating the stagger bar of whatever you're attacking, or at the very least take a large chunk out of it. Regardless, this attack will stagger you too at the end of it. The majority of your passives are there to either mitigate this or convert the turns of inactivity into further momentum. Restfulness to restore an additional light when not using combat pages to go hand in hand with Psych Up, Reaction Force to gain a small power increase if you don't attack, and Insurance Benefits to restore even more light in case you get attacked while you aren't attacking. Oh, and also Wedge and Piercer because your offense favors Pierce slightly, including the second hit of Pinpoint Breakthrough. Speaking of which, your combat pages are standard Singleton Draw Power, Light Recovery, Ready Position because of course, Augur Kick, which gives you extra strength next turn, and Somber Procuration, Confrontation, and Celestial Spear for general offense. The NPCs are the last remaining generic Hana fixer with Mind Hauler and Throwaway passives using purple tier pages and Fervid Emotions for offense, as well as a defense-oriented Chun build with Liquefied Flesh, as well as Salvador's and Lulu's passives for extra burn infliction. Now we get to Philosophy's other half, Floor of Religion. Floor of Religion is home to more people from the Weeb server, namely Shira and Chill. Hokma's floor is geared towards keeping a single person alive and benefiting from it through a variety of buffs, as well as some focus on defense with abnormalities that are themed around worship and or are symbolic of certain aspects of lobotomy cooperation. Shira, Chill, if you want to say Hokma balls, now would be the time, because Patron Librarian Hokma is using an Udyat key page with the Blockma strat. What's the Blockma strat? For that, let's take a closer look at the abnormality pages of Burrowing Heaven. Lean Bloody Wings allows defensive dice to deal half their roll as damage to an enemy upon successfully blocking, Attention and Focus doubles all stagger damage dealt with blocks, and Gaze of Others, among other things, gives his block dice even more power. You can only have 2 of those active, but usually I always go for Attention and Focus because staggering is more important, and Lean Bloody Wings is a bit too slow for my liking to be an absolute must-pick. For the second page, I sometimes take Lean Bloody Wings, some other times I don't take anything else from Burrowing Heaven and give, say, 13th Toll to Shira, or I go for Baptism. His combat pages are set up to utilize this strategy. 2 Graze the Grass, 2 Will of the City, 2 Be On, which draws 2 on use and has 2 block dice and 1 block counter, 1 Iron Wall to buff his endurance, 1 Serpentine Barrier which has 3 block counters, and one of the Udyat's exclusive attacks called Creative. This page does, however, give lots of protection to the team if the last die hits, which is nice. Udyat key pages have appeared sometimes earlier, now it's time to explain what they can actually do. Udyat's members are just really good at tanking and protecting their friends. They recover half the stagger they lost in a turn unless they are staggered, give 2 protection to the ally that took the most damage last turn, and gain protection themselves after taking one-sided attacks. Because the Udyat are so naturally defensive and tanky, I am playing further into this by giving him Liquefied Flesh and Your Shield to boost all his defensive dice by 2, as well as triple R-Suit and the Rabbit's Muscle Force passive to make the charge from Graze the Grass go somewhere. The haste also helps with redirecting attacks and protecting his assistants. Shira, you wanted something unhinged for your appearance, so here's Gloria's key page, complete with her signature faceplate. Gloria is another index proxy, a friend of Esther. As an index proxy, you get access to locked potential just like Esther does, meaning you want to go for Singleton here in order to enable the free dice power boost and special attack that locked potential provides. And where Esther gets free page draws, Gloria gets free light cost reduction via easygoing breather. On top of that, I gave you Fervor because of course, Information Assessment to reduce their defenses, Blind Fire for extra initial power, and Electric Shock to inflict paralysis occasionally. Your offense consists of 2 light recovery pages in the form of Forward March and Class and Respect, with Multi-Slash and Will of the Prescript for draw power. Execute boosts itself when Singleton, Binding Chains weakens the enemy's attack when Singleton, as well as Identify Weak Point and Augur Kick in case you want to make some big swings. Identify Weak Point in particular is noteworthy because of how well it pairs with Information Assessment. Remember, this passive can change any resistances to normal, and Identify Weak Point is a combat page that always hits with the damage type that the opponent is weakest against, which in some fights is just the one that got reduced by Information Assessment. Oh, and of course you also have Gloria's special attack you get from Blade Unlocked, known as Eradication, which is just a simple but effective mass summation attack, which is sometimes all you need. Chill, you have Catriel's key page. She's another Thumb member, meaning she gets access to all the goodies that come with the Thumb, like their extremely powerful ranged attacks and the ammo gimmick. For a more detailed explanation of how the Thumb works exactly, see back in Gator's segment on the history floor. 90% of what I say there also applies to you. You may not have the same powerful exclusive passives that Callow's key page does, but Catriel's exclusive passive, Empowered First Shot, boosts the first shot of every ranged attack. I also gave you Dennis's passive, which recycles used ammo, as well as all the discard passives I can afford to give you, like Best Choice and Bottom Deal, to give you extra sustain and draw power. Also Acrobatics for bonus damage. Your combat pages are identical to what Gator is using, one of every Thumb exclusive together with Multi-Slash, Class and Respect, and Switcheroo. While I said I won't go into the details of the Thumb's gimmick, what I will go into detail of, however, is something I didn't do in the previous segments, namely the actual pages themselves. Reload is the Thumb's exclusive draw page that, well, draws a page and adds 1 ammo on use, and Bayonet Combat also adds 2 ammo on use. Suppressing Shot is a decent and cheap ranged attack that discards 1 ammo, Summary Judgment I already covered, Shock Round discards 2 ammo and deals a lot of stagger damage, and Focus Fire discards up to 4 zero-cost pages, usually more ammo, to boost itself on top of hitting like a truck even without ammo to discard. Like I said before, the Thumb discards ammunition, and though it's when discarding ammo the bonuses activate, they can in theory discard anything, hence the inclusion of Switcheroo for added consistency as it lets you draw 1 upon getting discarded. Multi-Slash and Class and Respect also serve the same purpose. These 2 in particular always have a lower priority for discarding than ammo and Switcheroo due to costing 1 light instead of 0, and for the same reason they cannot be discarded by Focus Fire. The 2 NPCs are running a generic Leaflet Smoke build with Church of Gears passives Sooty Thwack and Puppet Skeleton, and a Bada Charge build with Rhino passives for extra bulk and Bada's special attack Devastating Thrash. Now there's only 1 floor left. The floor of General Works. Floor of General Works has 4 people from the Weeb server in it: Graph, Nero, Flesh Orbs, and Neapolitan, with no space for NPCs. It is a generalist floor with simple but effective buffs, some of which are general buffs, others like Sword of Frost and Blizzard mess with speed, and others that manipulate the combat pages themselves, particularly Lies, more on that later. This floor is also the only one left that's technically not complete yet, so I cannot speak of the floor's full capacities yet, but the abnormalities here, except maybe the missing one, are all related to either Carmen or Angela. Let's not get into Project Moon lore though, we have builds to showcase. Roland is a similar case to Binah in that he is stuck using his own unique key page, the page of the Black Silence. Oh right, spoilers, Roland's true identity is the Black Silence, I forgot to mention that earlier. This key page gives him access to an array of very powerful attacks and a passive that increases the power of every 3rd attack he uses. His attacks synergize particularly well with Lies, an abnormality page that randomizes the cost of all pages with a cost of 3 or less. Ranga and Zelkova Workshop are not affected by this through their passives, which is great, but neither is his strongest basic attack Wheels Industry by virtue of it being a 4 cost, which kinda sucks. Other than that, this usually results in a cost reduction for his strong attacks, especially Crystal Atelier, which is his version of Repressed Flesh and Emotional Turbulence. Not much else to say, it's just all numbers big because big number bigger than small numbers. However, he also has access to a locked potential-like mechanic where once Roland has used all 9 of his attacks at least once, he gains access to Furioso, which destroys all dice the opponent has on his page and then causes Roland to massacre the guy he's fighting. Just like Binah, I cannot change anything about this build, but also just like Binah, I can attribute passives, so I gave him Mind Hauler and Corpse Cleanup for extra sustain, Skim Prescript for an extra draw at the start, as well as Deep Breath and Unstable Charge to occasionally give him some light and power. Now onto the assistants. Graph, you are using the key page of Mirene, the last remaining Hana boss. As a Hana boss, you get access to the trigrams like all Hana members, but whereas Harold only gets some defense, you get one of the greatest and most build-defining passives in the game, Hana for All. This passive makes it so all buffs that you gain from combat pages, be it your own or your friends', are copied onto random other people. This is such a powerful effect that it not only defines your whole build, but also parts of the builds of everyone else on this floor. On top of this, I also gave you some throwaway passives that I thought would work with Hana for All, but don't, because it only applies to combat pages. Fervent Beats doesn't work with Hana for All either, but to be fair, if it did, it would be ridiculously broken. Hana for All does, however, work with the Hana's Strength and Defense trigrams, as well as the defense boost you get from using trigram formation with the defense trigram. I'm still keeping the passives on because I ran out of ideas and it fits so well with the theme of buffing yourself that I decided, you know what, he's keeping those. More specifically, I give you Unstable Charge, which gives you 1 strength at random, Meow Meow, which gives 2 random allies 1 strength each at the start of the fight, Improv Drumming because it came with Meow Meow, Half-Baked Courage, which gives you 1 strength next round every time an ally dies, and Remembrance, which gives you 2 strength permanently if any ally dies but only once. Speaking of buffing yourself, that's what all of your offensive options outside of the usual singleton draw power recovery do. Iron Wall gives you Endurance, Confrontation gives everyone protection, which includes yourself and therefore still gets copied onto someone else, Be She and Augur Kick give Strength to you, and of course Trigram Formation, which I already went over earlier. Augur Kick is especially worth mentioning because it gives 3 strength to you, but it does so in 2 instances of 1 and 2 strength each, meaning this can and usually will get copied onto 2 different people. Nero, you have Hubert's key page, the last remaining index proxy. Just like Shira and me, you get access to Locked Potential, which encourages you to go full singleton with your build to gain a power boost and access to a unique attack, and Hubert's unique passive causes all defensive dice clashing against you to lose 1 power, allowing you to win those clashes more easily and punch through their defenses. I also gave you the last copy of Information Assessment to reduce their defenses, the last copy of Firm as a Great Mountain for sustain, Fervor because it comes together with the latter, and Electric Shock for paralysis. Your offense outside of the obvious light recovery includes Binding Chains and Execute for damage output, as well as Eliminate, which gives 1 strength to all allies upon getting a kill with it, which Graph's Hana for All sees happen and copies it onto another guy, and Confrontation, which gives 1 protection to all allies, which Graph's Hana for All also sees happen and protects someone else even further. Once you unlock your blade, you also get access to Hubert's special attack, Decapitation, a very powerful ranged attack which inflicts feeble and lots of bleed. Flesh Orbs, you are rocking the last remaining Boris key page. I figured the floor needs some defensive power. Just like all the other Boris users, you are especially tanky thanks to Boris's unique passive, Grit, which reduces all damage you take, including from status effects, by 1. To complement this, I gave you passives to make you even more tanky. Health Hauler and Emergency Rations, as well as Liquefied Flesh because it comes with Health Hauler, and also Fervor because it's Fervor. Your offense has some similarities to Nero's, with both of you running Singleton Recovery as well as Confrontation, which Graph's Hana for All can see happen. You also have Cleave Across and Strike Down for some chunky attacks, as well as Coordinated Assault, which gives strength protection and stagger protection to a random other ally, which has a 25% chance of hitting Graph, which is Hana for all sees happen and then copies those 3 buffs on other people, sometimes separately, sometimes together. Also Discipline, because you're Boris, and as Boris you gotta run Discipline. Neapolitan, you are running Alan's key page, the boss of the Night Owls with the knife peg leg. In case you were wondering why Netzach isn't using it, well, here's your answer. As a Night Owl member, you gain access to the same passives the generic Night Owls do, like Stiletto and Mercy, but also Alan's unique passive Chink in the Armor, which makes it so that if your speed is at least 3 higher than your targets, you destroy one of their block dice upon clashing. This is where the speed manipulation of this floor comes into play. If I give you the Sword of Frost abnormality page, you can inflict bind on them for free, and I can give you more speed in the form of urging or even fervent beats. On top of that, I attributed Oscar's key page to it, so you get the Wedge off his passives for stabbier stabs, as well as Unrelenting to make you harder to kill, as well as Rabbit augmentation to give you more haste as you lose HP. Your combat pages are set up similarly to Netzach's. Frontal Assault and Wedging Thorn and Extract Fuel for light recovery, as well as Celestial Spear and Will of the Prescript. The difference is it's not a bleed build, so you're using Gale Kick instead of Shoving Stab and Somber Procuration instead of Venomous Fangs for better offense, as well as Fleet Edge to give you even more haste, which also happens to be a Pierce attack, and Alan's unique attack, Stiletto, which deals increased damage the more haste you have and the more bind your target has to really bring the pain. Like I said with Netzach's build, the lack of multi-slash is made up for by Extract Fuel, which recovers the same amount of light, and the fact that Gale Kick draws a page on hit and Celestial Spear draws one on use. That about covers all of it. I hope all of you are satisfied with your builds and looks. Next time on Library of Ruina, the game has thrown all subtlety out the window. We are fighting the Blue Sicko and his gang now. Until then,